The courtroom went still the instant the teenager laughed. "Aren't you, like, prehistoric?" he mocked loudly enough for everyone to hear. His expensive watch flashed beneath the lights as he leaned back with a grin, completely sure everything revolved around him. Judge Judy didn't react. She slowly closed the folder in front of her. His grin began to disappear, because within the next few moments, everything shifted. The laughter still lingered in the room like smoke, sharp, cocky, impossible to ignore. Even after it ended, its echo remained in the silence, almost daring someone to respond. Judge Judy lifted her eyes, and the entire room seemed to stop breathing. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a sound people usually ignored. But today, even that faint hum felt uneasy, as if it were bracing for what came next. Brandon Hale, 17, wealthy and convinced he deserved attention, sat in his chair as though he were relaxing in an exclusive lounge instead of appearing in court. The smug look on his face carried the same confidence that had made him insult Judge Judy moments earlier, calling her ancient as though disrespect was some kind of privilege. The plaintiff, Luis Ortega, stood nearby. Grease stains still marked the edges of his fingernails, evidence of long hours in the repair shop he owned, a life completely different from luxury watches and entitled attitudes. He kept his eyes lowered, not because he was weak, but because he couldn't believe someone could laugh at the very place meant to deliver justice. Judge Judy slowly shut the file in front of her, every movement controlled. It was the kind of action that didn't need loudness to make an impact. The atmosphere in the courtroom changed. People shifted in their seats. Even the bailiff straightened slightly, sensing the tension building. Brandon noticed, but only a little. He tapped his heel against the chair leg, a steady rhythm of impatience. "Can we just finish this already?" he muttered, loud enough to be heard. Judge Judy ignored the remark. Instead, she tilted her head with the careful precision of someone deciding the exact second to strike. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut through the silence. "Would you like to explain that laugh?" His smirk faltered. For the first time, he looked unsure whether she was serious and unsure whether he should have laughed at all. "I mean, it was only a joke," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "A joke," Judy repeated quietly. She didn't raise her voice, but somehow the word became heavier. "Tell me, what exactly about this situation do you find amusing?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The silence stretched tight, thin as a wire ready to snap. Luis watched quietly, taking in the change. This was the first moment Brandon's confidence cracked, the first sign that something underneath the polished surface was beginning to show. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. "Perhaps you'd like to start by explaining why your car damaged Mr. Ortega's property." The laughter was gone now, replaced by something else, a slight tension at the corner of Brandon's mouth, a trace of uncertainty. Before he could answer, Luis raised his hand carefully. "Your Honor, I think there's something you should see first." The room turned toward him. Luis swallowed hard, his voice shaky but determined. "There's something Brandon didn't mention, and I brought proof." Judge Judy's hand paused over the file, ready. Brandon's confidence slipped again. Not much, only for a moment. But in a courtroom, where silence often says more than words, that small moment meant everything. Luis stepped forward with quiet determination. The kind a man gains after years of being ignored by people who think money matters more than honesty. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from everything that had brought him here. He reached into an old folder and pulled out a photograph. Judge Judy tilted her head. "Let's see it." The photo stood across the bench like a silent accusation. Judy picked it up without looking away from Luis. When she finally looked down, her eyebrows rose just slightly, but everyone in the room felt it. Even Brandon shifted in his seat. The image showed the entrance to the garage. The metal frame was bent inward. Tire marks stretched across the pavement. Pieces of red paint clung to the edge, a very expensive shade of red. "Mr. Hale," Judy said softly, "does this belong to your car?" Brandon's jaw tightened. It could be similar. Hard to tell from that picture. Judge Judy tapped the photo once. "The angle is not what concerns me." What concerns me is that your vehicle is the only one in this case with that exact paint color." Lewis let out a slow breath. For the first time since the hearing started, some of the tension left his shoulders. Brandon leaned back, trying to regain his confidence. "Look, I already told you it was barely a bump. This guy is blowing it out of proportion for money." Lewis looked up sharply. "For money? I had to shut down my shop for 2 days because of that damage. 2 days without income. I'm not here because I want extra cash. I'm here because you refuse to treat me like I mattered." The words hit the room hard. People in the gallery murmured. Some sounded shocked. Others sounded like they had seen this kind of arrogance before. Judge Judy lifted her hand and the room fell silent immediately. Her eyes locked on Brandon. "Did you refuse to speak to him?" Brandon shrugged, but his voice sounded weaker now. He was making too big a deal out of it. "I just didn't have time to deal with him." A faint smile crossed Judge Judy's face. Not amusement. Understanding. People who refuse to take responsibility often claim they didn't have time. Brandon's smug expression cracked again. Then Judge Judy set the photo down and folded her hands. "Mr. Ortega mentioned earlier that there is more evidence, something you haven't seen yet. Is that correct?" Lewis nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." The tension in the room tightened, every heartbeat seeming to line up with whatever was about to happen next. Judge Judy motioned toward him. "Go ahead." Lewis paused for only a second before reaching back into the folder. This time, he pulled out a printed screenshot from social media. Brandon stiffened before the image was even turned around. Lewis placed the screenshot on the bench, and the color immediately drained from Brandon's face. Judge Judy leaned forward, interest sharpening in her eyes. "Mr. Judy, Ortega, what exactly am I looking at?" The courtroom monitor flickered softly before anyone even touched it, glowing like a warning. Brandon's confidence disappeared 1 second at a time. He recognized that screen, that layout, and exactly what might be shown next. Lewis carefully handed the screenshot to the clerk, who passed it to Judge Judy. She studied it briefly before looking toward the monitor. "Is this connected to a video?" she asked. Lewis nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. The full clip is on the flash drive I submitted." A ripple moved through the audience, the kind that comes right before the truth enters the room. Brandon's fingers twitched against the table, tapping nervously in a rhythm he tried to disguise as impatience. Judge Judy gave a firm nod. "Play it." The lights dimmed slightly as the monitor came to life. The first frame appeared. Brandon stood in a parking lot with 2 friends, laughing. The front of his red sports car filled most of the screen. The audio crackled for a moment, then became clear. "Watch this," Brandon said, confidence dripping from every word. Lewis lowered his head slightly, preparing himself. The video continued. Brandon revved the engine, lurched forward, clipped the garage entrance, and immediately burst into laughter, as though it was some kind of joke. His friends laughed with him. The camera shook from their laughter. Then came the moment that silenced the entire courtroom. "I'll just blame the guy. Who's going to believe some mechanic over me?" The room inhaled all at once. A horrified silence spread through the gallery. The real Brandon stared at the screen, blinking rapidly, his lips slightly apart. For the first time there was no smirk, no arrogance, no plan, only shock. Judge Judy didn't watch the video. She watched Brandon. She watched his shoulders slowly fold inward. She watched the way his breathing changed. She waited until the clip ended before speaking. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice calm and steady. "Is that your video?" Brandon swallowed hard. "It was taken out of context." The room reacted instantly. Gasps, whispers, even a quiet laugh from the back. Judge Judy let out a sharp breath. "Out of context? Those are your words, your actions, your laughter, your intent." Brandon tightened his jaw. "People joke around. It was stupid, okay? Just a dumb moment. Everybody says things they don't mean." Lewis looked up and met Brandon's eyes. There was no anger in his face, only disappointment, hurt, something painfully human. "Maybe," Lewis said quietly. "But most people don't record themselves hurting someone and bragging about it." The simple sentence landed harder than any accusation. Judge Judy lifted the screenshot again, holding it beside the frozen video frame. Mr. Washate, Hale, your social media post mocked the entire incident. Your caption said, "Mechanics can fix anything, especially their attitudes." Would you like to explain that? Brandon opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The silence thickened, spreading through the courtroom like a shadow. Then the side door opened. Everyone turned. Brandon's mother stepped inside, out of breath, pale, clutching something tightly against her chest. She looked terrified. Her eyes immediately found Brandon, filled with panic. "Judge, I need to speak." And in that moment, everyone in the courtroom understood the truth ran deeper than they had realized. The door had barely shut behind her before the entire atmosphere changed. A mother's fear can silence even the loudest arrogance, and Brandon felt it before anyone said another word. Judge Judy watched the trembling woman carefully, already sensing that even more truth was about to come out. Brandon's mother held a thin binder against her chest so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Her steps were quick and uneven, as if she had rushed there despite every instinct telling her not to. Brandon looked away the moment she entered. The confidence he had worn earlier was gone now, replaced by something smaller, weaker. Judge Judy lifted a hand gently. "Ma'am, take a breath. Then tell me why you are interrupting these proceedings." The woman took a shaky breath, exhaled and swallowed hard. "Your Honor, I never wanted this to happen. I thought I could deal with it myself. I thought I could stop it from going this far." Her voice trembled. "But Brandon hasn't been truthful with you." A low murmur spread through the gallery. Brandon sat up immediately. "Mom, sit," Judge Judy said firmly, without raising her voice. He dropped back into his chair at once. Brandon's mother stepped forward. "Brandon didn't tell me everything either. But I found out last night, and after seeing that video just now, I knew I had to say something." Judge Judy's expression sharpened. "What exactly did you find out?" The woman hesitated. Her fingers trembled against the binder, and her eyes shifted toward her son with a painful mix of fear and love. He wasn't supposed to be driving that car at all. "Mom." Brandon's voice cracked. This time it wasn't anger. It was fear. Judge Judy paused. "He wasn't supposed to be driving? Why not?" Brandon's mother opened the binder slowly, almost reluctantly. A single document slid out and landed face up on the bench. The title was impossible to miss. "Notice of suspended minor license. Driving privileges revoked." A sharp breath moved through the courtroom. Judge Judy leaned back slightly. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice steady but colder now. "Your license was suspended." Brandon's breathing became uneven. "It was only temporary. I was going to get it fixed. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal," Judge Judy repeated, her tone precise and unforgiving. "You illegally drove a vehicle, damaged someone's property, mocked the victim, and humiliated him online, and you believe that is not a big deal." Brandon's mother closed her eyes, as if the weight of everything had finally crushed the last piece of denial she had left. "I enabled him," she whispered. "I let him talk me into excuses. I thought it was just attitude. I didn't realize it had become this." Judge Judy looked at her with controlled compassion. "We're doing the right thing now." The woman gave a weak nod. "There's more, Your Honor, something I found in his room this morning. I think you need to see it." Brandon's eyes widened instantly. "Mom, don't." But his words died the moment she lifted a sealed white envelope. She placed it carefully on Judge Judy's bench. Judge Judy tapped the envelope once, noticing its weight. "What's inside this, Mrs. Hale?" The woman's reply was barely above a whisper, something he hoped nobody would ever find. The envelope sat there like a silent threat, not dramatic, not loud, just heavy with the truth Brandon never wanted anyone to see. Judge Judy pulled it closer. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes were already preparing for whatever came next. The room seemed to grow smaller when she tore the seal open. Paper doesn't make much noise, yet everyone heard it. A soft rip that cut through Brandon's final defense. Judge Judy opened the envelope carefully, as if she were peeling back layers of a lie. Brandon stared straight ahead without blinking. His jaw was clenched so tightly the tension showed in his neck. Inside was a small file, thinner than expected but no less dangerous. Judge Judy lifted the first page, scanned it, and something changed in her posture. Not surprise, not anger, something colder. Recognition. She set the paper down. Mr. Bacher. Hale, how many times has something like this happened before? Brandon's eyes darted toward his mother, fear mixing with betrayal. Mom, what did you do? His mother shook her head. I did what I should have done the first time. Judge Judy pressed her hand against the page. According to this report, there was a previous complaint filed against you involving property damage and harassment. The person later dropped the case, but not before submitting a written statement. A stunned silence moved through the courtroom. Lewis frowned, not out of surprise but sadness. What statement? Brandon asked quietly, his voice barely holding together. Judge Judy lifted the document. The complainant stated that after damaging their property, you pressured them into dropping the case. Through intimidation, through public humiliation online, through messages I don't think you ever expected anyone else to read. Brandon swallowed hard. People exaggerate. You can't trust everything someone writes. Oh? Judge Judy replied calmly. Then perhaps you'd like to explain the evidence attached to that statement. She turned the page. A printed transcript appeared, with several lines highlighted in yellow. The courtroom leaned forward as if gravity itself had changed. Lewis whispered under his breath. He's done this before. Judge Judy began reading aloud, her voice calm but heavy. Drop the complaint or I'll ruin you online. People listen to me. Nobody will care about you. Gasps broke through the room. Brandon's mother covered her mouth. Lewis let out a slow breath, relief and heartbreak mixing together. The energy in the courtroom shifted, tightening around Brandon like a trap finally closing. That wasn't serious, Brandon stammered. People joke. People say things when they're angry. It didn't mean anything. Judge Judy's expression hardened. Mr. Hale, threats are not jokes. Harassment is not humor. And most importantly, patterns are not accidents. She gathered the papers into a neat stack and placed them back on the bench. You knew exactly what you were doing. Brandon looked down, his fingers shaking now, the confidence he had worn all day breaking apart completely. Before anyone else could speak, Judge Judy flipped to the final page. It was a printed screenshot, slightly blurred but impossible to misunderstand. Her eyebrow lifted. Mr. Hale, she said slowly, would you like to explain this message you sent at 2:43 in the morning? Brandon froze. For the first time, real fear appeared in his eyes. The courtroom monitor lit up again, casting a pale glow across his face. If the earlier video had cracked his confidence, this next piece of evidence destroyed whatever was left of it. Because there is a difference between arrogance and something much darker. Judge Judy held the screenshot carefully between two fingers, almost as if she didn't want the ugliness of it touching her skin. 2:43 in the morning, she repeated, tapping the timestamp lightly. You were awake, Mr. Hale, awake and sending threats. Brandon's breathing faltered. I was just venting. People send dumb messages late at night. Dumb, Judge Judy repeated. Let's take a closer look at that word. She nodded toward the bailiff, who connected the flash drive again. A new image appeared on the courtroom screen. The message Brandon had typed in the middle of the night. No excuses, no filters, just harsh words glowing on the screen. Drop it or I'll post everything. You think you were embarrassed before. I can ruin your life in hours. A wave of shock moved through the gallery. Even the people who had looked doubtful earlier leaned forward now, their faces suddenly serious. Lewis stared at the message with quiet pain in his eyes. Not satisfaction, not revenge, pain. Brandon tried to speak. I was angry, okay? He kept pushing me to take responsibility and You threatened him, Judge Judy said coldly. You turned humiliation into a weapon. You used fear to control someone. Do you understand what that makes you, Mr. Hale? Brandon opened his mouth, then closed it again, His eyes moved between Judge Judy, Lewis, and his mother, desperately looking for someone to save him. "Don't answer," Judge Judy said softly. "Your messages have already said more than you ever could." The room felt heavy. Even the fluorescent lights seemed dimmer, as though the truth itself had darkened the room. Lewis stepped forward. "Your Honor, this is why I came here. Not for money, not because I wanted revenge. I just wanted someone to finally see what he's like when nobody is watching." Something inside Brandon broke at those words. His shoulders dropped. The arrogance drained out of him completely. "I never meant to hurt anybody," he whispered. Lewis shook his head slowly. "But you did, and you laughed while you were doing it." Judge Judy allowed the silence to stretch, not because she wanted to be cruel, because sometimes silence says what words cannot. Then she let out a slow breath. "Mr. Hale, patterns matter. You are not here because of one mistake. You are here because cruelty became a habit for you." The gallery stayed silent, absorbing every word. Judge Judy leaned back slightly. "I believe we've heard enough from your side for now. It's time," she said, turning toward the side door, "to hear from someone who has been waiting outside." Brandon's face went pale. "Who?" Judge Judy nodded toward the bailiff. "Bring in the witness." Whispers spread through the courtroom. The door opened slowly. Footsteps echoed in the silence. And when the witness stepped inside, Brandon's entire expression collapsed into fear. He knew exactly who it was. The door opened with a soft, mechanical sound, the kind that seems to announce change before anyone even speaks. A young man stepped into the courtroom, his hands buried in the sleeves of an old hoodie, his eyes heavy with things he had been carrying too long. The moment Brandon saw him, the last bit of composure left his face. He froze completely. Not a small pause, not hesitation, the kind of stillness that takes over when someone sees their past walking toward them. The witness looked only a little older than Brandon, maybe 18, with nervous movements and a hollow tension behind his eyes. He stopped in the center of the room, looking like he was still deciding whether to speak or walk back out. Judge Judy studied him. "State your name." The young man swallowed hard. "Evan. Evan Carter." Brandon muttered something under his breath. A quiet, panicked curse meant only for himself, but everyone heard the fear in it. Judge Judy nodded slowly. "Mr. Carter, why are you here today?" Evan looked at Brandon first, not with anger, with guilt. The kind that makes someone look older than they are. "Because I should have spoken up last time." Lewis lifted his eyebrows. Brandon's jaw tightened. His mother closed her eyes, as if she already knew what was coming. Judge Judy motioned for Evan to continue. Evan's voice cracked at first, then steadied. "I was there during the last incident, the one in the sealed file. I saw what happened. I saw Brandon damage the fence, and I saw him threaten the man afterward." Brandon leaned forward suddenly. "You don't know what you're talking about. Enough." Judge Judy's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Let him speak." Evan flinched, then nodded. "Brandon told me to back him up, to lie if I had to. He said if I didn't, he'd make my life miserable at school." Whispers spread through the gallery. Shock mixed with recognition. Bullying stays quiet until someone finally gives it a voice. Evan twisted his hands together nervously. "I was scared. I lied. I told the man it wasn't a big deal, that it was all just a misunderstanding. But it wasn't." Judge Judy leaned back, letting every word settle into the room. "And why are you coming forward now?" Evan turned toward Lewis. "Because when I saw what he did to you, I realized I let it happen before, and I didn't want to be that person again." The honesty in his voice silenced the room. Brandon's voice cracked. "So what? Now you're pretending you were some kind of victim? You were part of it too." Evan shook his head. "No, Brandon. I was afraid of you. That's not the same thing." The truth in those words hit harder than any accusation. Judge Judy folded her hands together, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Mr. Nari Carter, is there anything else you'd like to share with the court?" Evan hesitated. The moment stretched thin. Then he reached into the pocket of his hoodie and pulled out a phone. His thumb hovered over the screen. "There's one more thing." He unlocked the device. A voicemail icon glowed on the screen. "I kept this," Evan whispered, "just in case he ever did something like this again." The entire gallery held its breath. Then Evan pressed play. The first sound wasn't a voice, it was a breath. Sharp, uneven. The kind of breath that comes from someone who enjoys having power over other people. Then Brandon's voice filled the courtroom, cold enough to change the mood instantly. The voicemail echoed through the speakers, rough and grainy but impossible to mistake. "Listen to me. People like him don't matter. They exist to fix my problems, not create new ones." A gasp moved through the audience. Then came silence. Judge Judy didn't blink. Her expression turned to stone, not shocked, not angry, just completely finished with excuses. The recording continued. "If he tries anything, I'll bury him online. I've got followers who'll believe anything I post. I can ruin him before lunch." Lewis's face tightened. He wasn't looking at the screen or the speakers. He was staring down at the floor, his jaw clenched, reliving every humiliation those words promised. Evan took a small step back, guilt trembling in his hands. "I didn't mean to keep it this long," he whispered. I didn't know what to do." Brandon's mother covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. Not the tears of surprise, the tears of recognition. She had known parts of who her son had become, just not all of it. Then the recording grew even darker. "I don't care about him. I care about him. I care about winning. People like him forget their place. I remind them." Those final words hit the courtroom like a punch. When the voicemail ended, the silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with realization, filled with shock. Even the bailiff, who had seen far worse cases, looked toward Judge Judy with visible disgust. Brandon sat completely still, not frozen by fear, frozen because there was nowhere left to hide. Every excuse, every lie, every bit of arrogance drained out of him in seconds. Judge Judy leaned forward, her elbows lightly touching the bench. "Mr. Reeve." "Hale," she said, "I want you to listen very carefully." Brandon slowly lifted his eyes to meet hers. They looked glassy now, lost. "You used your voice," Judge Judy said, "to disguise cruelty as confidence." He swallowed hard. "And now," she continued, "that same voice has exposed you." His mother sobbed quietly. Lewis finally looked up. His eyes were tired, full of pain, but there was something else there too. Relief. The relief of finally being believed. Judge Judy turned her attention back to Evan. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming forward." He nodded, his shoulders shaking under the weight of both guilt and courage. But before Judge Judy could continue, Lewis slowly raised a hand. "There's something strange, Your Honor." Judge Judy turned toward him. "What is it?" Lewis licked his lips nervously. "I never received that voicemail. Someone else sent it in. Someone who wanted the truth to come out." A ripple moved through the courtroom. Judge Judy narrowed her eyes. "Then who," she asked slowly, "sent it?" The question hung in the room like a blade. If Lewis hadn't submitted the voicemail, then someone else had been watching Brandon much more closely than anyone realized, and whoever it was had finally decided to stop staying silent. Judge Judy leaned forward, her hands folded on the bench. "Mr. Ortega," she said carefully, "repeat what you just said." Lewis swallowed hard. "I didn't send the voicemail, Your Honor. It showed up at my shop. No name, no note. Just an envelope pushed under the door." The gallery erupted into whispers, their voices rising like static beneath the fluorescent lights. Judge Judy raised her hand. The room went silent immediately. "So someone knew about this case," she said. "Someone wanted that message to be heard." Brandon's breathing became uneven. Panic flashed in his eyes. "This is ridiculous. Someone's trying to set me up. People online are obsessed with me." "Mr. Hale," Judge Judy interrupted sharply, "this is not your social media page. This is a courtroom." He shrank back in his chair. Lewis continued. "The envelope didn't have a return address. But whoever sent it wanted the truth to come out. Maybe they were too afraid to speak for themselves. Judge Judy looked at him for a moment, then turned to the bailiff. "We have someone waiting outside. Bring them in." Brandon jolted upright. Who's out there?" No one answered him. The door opened. Footsteps approached, light and uncertain, carrying an emotional weight behind them. A small figure appeared in the doorway. A young girl, 14, maybe 15. Her hands gripped the straps of a faded backpack. Her eyes were red, not from crying once, from crying often. Brandon froze. Judge Judy's voice softened. "Come in, sweetheart. Tell us your name." The girl stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Emily, Emily, Hale." A gasp swept through the courtroom. Brandon's mother pressed a hand against her chest, her face collapsing with emotion. Brandon whispered, horrified, "No, Emily, what are you doing?" Judge Judy nodded gently. "And how are you connected to this case, Emily?" The girl looked up. There was something heartbreaking in her eyes, fear mixed with courage. "Brandon is my brother." The air in the room seemed to thin. Judge Judy remained calm, but her expression deepened. "Emily, did you send the voicemail?" Emily hesitated for only a moment, long enough to show how hard this was for her. Then she nodded, small but certain. "Yes, Your Honor, I sent it." Brandon's voice cracked. "Why would you do that?" Emily tightened her grip on the backpack straps. "Because you hurt people, Brandon, and you never stop. Not until somebody else suffers for it." Judge Judy let the silence settle over the room, giving the truth space to land. Emily continued, her voice shaking. "I watched you yell at Mum. I watched you scare people at school. I watched you use your phone like a weapon. I couldn't let you do it again." Brandon blinked rapidly, the beginning of a breakdown showing across his face. Lewis looked at Emily with compassion. Evan lowered his eyes, understanding the courage it took for her to do what he couldn't. Judge Judy inhaled slowly. "Emily, you understand that what you did may have consequences." Emily nodded. "I know. But it was the only way to make him stop." Judge Judy leaned back slightly, studying the quiet strength in the young girl standing before her. "Emily," she said softly, "is there something else you want to show us?" Because Emily's trembling hand was already reaching toward the zipper of her backpack. Her fingers shook against it. The sound of the fabric moving seemed unnaturally loud in the silence. Everyone in the courtroom leaned forward. Even the air itself seemed to stop moving. And Brandon? He went completely still. Because he knew whatever came next wasn't just more evidence. It was the truth. Emily slowly unzipped the backpack, every movement revealing just how heavy this moment was for her. Then she reached inside. When her hand came back out, she was holding an old phone, slightly cracked. Worn down, not hers, Brandon's. The courtroom gasped. Brandon lurched forward. "Emily, that's mine. Give it back." Judge Judy raised her hand sharply. "Sit down." The force in her voice stopped Brandon instantly. Emily stepped closer to the bench, holding the phone in both hands like someone handing over a confession. "I kept it after he got a new one. He never noticed. He always leaves his old stuff lying around." Judge Judy accepted the phone. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. "Emily, why bring this? Why now?" Emily swallowed hard. "Because the voicemail wasn't the only thing on it. He recorded everything. Messages, videos, things he never thought anyone else would see." Brandon's mother collapsed into her chair, covering her mouth. Lewis tensed immediately, sensing something even worse was coming. Evans stared at the floor, guilt twisting through him. Brandon's voice finally exploded. "She's lying. She's trying to make me look, Mr. Hale," Judge Judy snapped. "Your sister has shown more courage in 5 minutes than you have in 17 years. Let her speak." Brandon fell back into his chair, breathing hard. Emily continued, her voice trembling but steady enough to keep going. "I sent the voicemail because I was scared of him. And because I was tired of watching him hurt people and then laugh like it didn't matter. Tired of waiting for Mom to do something. Tired of being too afraid to tell the truth." Lewis's expression softened. Evan nodded. He understood better than anyone. But the real reason I'm here, Emily said quietly, is because there's another video on this phone, one he doesn't know I found. Judge Judy's voice became lower. What kind of video? Emily hesitated, then spoke words that hit the courtroom like stones. One where he's talking to himself. Confusion moved through the gallery. Brandon went rigid, his face draining of color. Emily kept going. He wasn't talking to friends. He wasn't joking. He was alone in his room, staring into the mirror, saying things he planned to say to people, things he wanted to do to them. Judge Judy narrowed her eyes. A rehearsal? Emily nodded. A rehearsal for being cruel. The layers behind Brandon's arrogance began to peel away. The fear, the emptiness, the desperate need for control. Judge Judy turned the phone over in her hands, weighing it not only as a judge, but as someone who had spent years seeing the darkest parts of people. Emily, did you bring this video intending to submit it as evidence? Yes, Your Honor, she whispered. I think you need to see it. The courtroom became completely silent. Judge Judy looked at Brandon, not with anger, with a cold kind of understanding. Mr. Hale, she said softly, is there anything you want to tell me before I open this file? Brandon's eyes filled with a fear no confidence could hide. Judge Judy tapped the screen of Brandon's old phone. The room dimmed as the video loaded. Brandon's breath caught, barely audible, but enough. Because this was never a video meant for anyone else. This was the version of himself he believed no one would ever see. The screen flickered, then steadied. A dim bedroom appeared. Brandon's room. Clothes scattered across the floor. Red LED lights glowing faintly around the walls. The phone had been propped up, angled toward a full-length mirror. In the reflection stood Brandon. Not polished. Not smirking. Not performing. Just exposed. Raw. His eyes looked hollow. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, but stayed silent. She always let the truth speak first. The Brandon on the screen inhaled sharply, his chest trembling. Then he started talking, not to anyone else, to himself. You need to be tougher. He took another breath. People don't respect you unless they're afraid of you. A wave of shock moved through the room. Lewis blinked, stunned. Evan's hands tightened into fists. Emily's lip trembled. She had known this side of him long before anyone else. In the video, Brandon paced in front of the mirror. If they don't listen, make them. If they laugh, humiliate them. If they fight back, destroy them. His voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, the real Brandon in the courtroom looked like someone being haunted by his own reflection. The Brandon in the video stopped pacing. His jaw tightened. His eyes filled with tears. You have nothing if you're not in control. His reflection stared back at him mercilessly. Nobody notices you unless you're loud, unless you're winning. Then his voice completely broke. Nobody cares about you when you're quiet. A shiver ran through the courtroom, not because the words were cruel, because they were desperate. Judge Judy's expression softened, but only slightly. She had seen this before, the damage caused by building a personality on fear. On the screen, Brandon slammed his hand against the dresser. So don't be weak, don't ever be weak. He stared into the mirror with a mix of self-hatred and command. Be the one they're scared of, always. The video ended. Silence didn't just return, it settled over the room like something heavy and permanent. Brandon stared down at the table, his shoulders shaking in small, helpless movements. His mother was openly crying now, finally seeing the darkness she had mistaken for confidence. Emily looked at her brother with heartbreaking honesty. Pain, fear, love, all twisted together into something impossible to untangle. Lewis slowly let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Evan blinked away the guilt that had buried itself deep inside him. Judge Judy placed the phone down carefully on the bench. Mr. Libris. Hale, she said softly. This is not arrogance, this is pain. Brandon looked up, raw, desperate, completely exposed. But pain, Judge Judy continued, does not excuse cruelty. His face collapsed. and it certainly does not give someone the right to hurt others before they are hurt themselves. Brandon wiped at his face, his voice shaking. I didn't know anyone would ever see that. Judge Judy nodded slowly. That is the point, Mr. Hale. The version of yourself you hide is often the one that reveals who you truly are. A thin silence stretched across the room. Judge Judy leaned back. And now, she said quietly, we must decide what this truth means. But before she could continue, Lewis stepped forward with something in his hand. He did not move quickly. He moved carefully, like someone carrying a truth fragile enough to break if touched too hard. In his hand was a small object wrapped in an old shop rag. Brandon watched him approach, eyes swollen, whatever mask he once wore now completely shattered. Lewis stopped a few feet from the bench. His voice was soft but steady. Your Honor, before you continue, I want to show you something I found after the accident. Judge Judy gave a small nod for him to continue. He carefully unwrapped the rag, revealing a small polished metal emblem, the kind that sat on the front grille of a luxury car. The bright red enamel was chipped in one corner, matching perfectly with the damaged garage frame shown earlier. Brandon's breath caught. His mother pressed a hand against her chest. Emily instinctively stepped a little closer, protective even now. Lewis held the emblem gently in both hands, like it carried its own kind of pain. I didn't bring this to punish him, he said quietly. I kept it because I wanted to believe he would come back and apologize. I waited outside for hours that day. His voice weakened. He never came. Brandon seemed to collapse inward, his shoulders trembling. I'm sorry, he whispered. But the words came out broken, cracked, barely loud enough to hear. Judge Judy allowed the silence to absorb the apology, but she did not let it erase responsibility. Mr. Hale, she said, this emblem is not proof of a crime. It is proof of a moment you chose not to face. Brandon nodded as tears rolled freely down his face. Emily moved a little closer to her brother, caught between anger and compassion. It was the painful kind of closeness that only exists between siblings who survived the same storm in different ways. Lewis stepped back and wrapped the rag around the emblem again. I'm not here to destroy him, he said softly. I'm here because somebody had to stop him before he destroys someone else, including himself. Those words hit harder than any accusation ever could. Brandon lowered his head. His voice was so small it barely reached the bench. I didn't know how to stop. I thought if I wasn't the strongest, no one would notice me. Judge Judy looked at him with sharp, deliberate compassion. Being noticed, she said gently, has nothing to do with hurting people. In fact, cruelty makes you invisible in ways you will never understand. Brandon shook as the last pieces of his defense finally fell apart. He was no longer hiding behind arrogance. He was hiding behind grief, fear, and years of things left unsaid. His mother finally stood, tears running down her face. I should have helped him sooner, she whispered. I should have stopped this years ago. Judge Judy lifted a hand, stopping the self-blame. You cannot change the past, she said, but you can be part of the truth now. Emily stepped fully toward Brandon this time and placed a hesitant hand on his shoulder. He flinched, not because he was angry, because he didn't know how to accept comfort. The courtroom watched in rare silence, witnessing not just accountability, but complete collapse. Judge Judy took a slow breath, grounding the room. This is the moment, she said, when we decide what happens next. Not for punishment, for change. She folded her hands. Mr. Hale, your consequences are not over. Brandon looked up with red, trembling eyes. As of this moment, Judge Judy said, we move into accountability. Judge Judy did not reach for the gavel. She reached for clarity. There was no anger in her voice now, only precision. Brandon was no longer facing punishment. He was facing the truth. The courtroom was quieter than it had been all morning, not because of fear, because of the weight of the moment. Everyone could feel the shift. The storm had passed. This was the aftermath. the place where the damage settles and the injuries reveal themselves. Judge Judy folded her hands together and spoke with the calm authority of someone who understood the difference between destruction and accountability. Mr. Hale, consequences are not cruelty, they are structure. And right now, structure is exactly what you need. Brandon nodded. His eyes were red, his posture small. For the first time, he wasn't performing, he wasn't posturing. He wasn't deflecting, he was listening. Judge Judy continued. You will pay the full cost of the damage to Mr. Ortega's shop. That is not negotiable. You caused harm, and you will repair it. Lewis nodded once. Not with satisfaction. With relief, reality was finally catching up. In addition, Judge Judy said, you will compensate him for the days of lost work. Not because he needs the money, but because actions create consequences, and you need to learn to see beyond yourself. Brandon swallowed hard. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Judy shifted her attention to the stack of printed threats and messages. As for the harassment, intimidation, and online defamation, this court cannot impose criminal penalties. But I can impose formal civil sanctions. She slid a document across the bench. You will write a formal apology to both Mr. Ortega and the previous victim, and it will be reviewed and approved by this court. Brandon's lips parted in surprise. I will. Not a letter filled with excuses, Judge Judy added. A letter of accountability. Brandon nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the old phone, the recording still frozen on his anguished reflection. Judge Judy's voice was calm, cutting through the weight of the moment. As for the behavior shown here, the fear, the performance, the cruelty born from insecurity, you need help, not punishment. Emily's eyes softened. Their mother pressed trembling fingers to her lips. You are ordered, Judy continued, to complete a counseling program focused on emotional regulation, digital responsibility, and interpersonal accountability. Not as a form of shame, but as a form of rebuilding. Brandon's voice cracked. I'll do it. I will. I don't want to be this person anymore. Judy studied him for a long moment, discerning, not judging. That, she said softly, is the only thing you've said today that sounds like the truth. Lewis exhaled, releasing months of tension. Evan stared at the floor, relieved yet still carrying the weight of the past. Emily stepped closer to Brandon, silently signaling she wasn't giving up on him. Not entirely. Judge Judy paused, letting the moment breathe. Mr. Hale, she said, none of what I've ordered is meant to destroy you. It is meant to ground you, because arrogance grows in soil where consequences do not exist. Brandon nodded, tears slipping down his face. And today, Judy continued, consequences finally found you. She turned to Lewis. Mr. Ortega, is there anything you wish to say before I issue final judgment? The room held its breath. Lewis didn't step forward immediately. He took a long, steady breath that carried months of anger and something softer underneath. The courtroom watched him, waiting to see whether he would strike or forgive. Lewis approached the bench carefully, like someone accustomed to handling fragile things, engines, frames, people. He looked at Brandon, not the arrogant teen who had strutted into court hours ago, but the trembling boy in front of him, stripped of armor, crying openly because there was nothing left to protect. Your Honor, Lewis began slowly, when this started I was angry, furious, not because of the money, not because of the damage. Brandon looked up, eyes rimmed with red. I was angry because someone looked at me, someone who didn't know me, and decided I wasn't worth basic respect, that I could be stepped on because of who I am and what I do. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Judy listened, expression soft but discerning. After seeing all this, the video, the messages, his sister, I don't think Brandon needs more anger. He needs a chance. Brandon blinked, stunned. Lewis turned fully to him. Look, kid, you messed up bad. You hurt people. You scared people. You thought your voice gave you power. But power isn't how loud you are, it's how you act when someone gives you the chance to do better. Brandon's breath quivered. Why? Why would you say that after everything I did? Lewis offered a sad, tired smile. Because somebody gave me that chance once, and I am standing here today because they didn't give up on me. The words hit Brandon like a shockwave, a lifeline he didn't expect, didn't feel he deserved. Emily brushed a tear from her cheek. Their mother clasped her hands together, whispering a quiet prayer. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Ortega, are you requesting leniency in the sanctions?" Lewis shook his head. "No, Your Honor. Consequences are still consequences. He needs them. But I forgave you. Not for you, for me." Silence fell. The good kind, the kind that heals instead of wounds. Brandon broke into sobs, shoulders shaking. Emily moved beside him instinctively, placing her hand on his back. He didn't flinch this time. Lewis nodded once, then stepped back, relief, sadness, and closure all woven into his expression. Judge Judy took a deep, thoughtful breath, letting the moment settle into the courtroom walls. She lifted her gavel slowly, purposefully. "Then let us finish this," she said, voice carrying the solemnity of truth. The final judgment was moments away. In the eyes of those present, this was justice, mercy, or both. The room held still. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, as if the entire courtroom had exhaled together. The morning's sharp tension had cooled into something quieter, heavier, the settling dust of truth. Brandon sat with hands clasped, fingers trembling, face streaked with tears he no longer tried to hide. Emily sat beside him, a small but steady anchor. Their mother hovered behind them, breathing in the fragile space between regret and hope. Judge Judy lowered the gavel slightly, her voice textured with purpose, not anger. "Mr. Hale, today was not about humiliation. It was about illumination. The truth has stepped into this room, and it will not be stepped on again." Brandon nodded faintly. "First," she continued, "you will pay full restitution to Mr. Ortega for the property damage, including lost income. This is a consequence, not revenge." Lewis bowed his head respectfully, the weight of the morning settling into his posture. Judge Judy's voice carried a deliberate calm as she continued. "Second, you will complete a structured counseling and behavioral responsibility program. Your cruelty did not grow overnight. Your healing will not either, but it must begin." Brandon swallowed hard, voice frayed. "I understand." "Good," Judy said, her tone firm but not harsh, "because understanding is the first skill you must learn." She turned her gaze toward Emily, softening ever so slightly. "Your sister showed courage today. More courage than you have shown in a long time. If you take anything from this hearing, let it be that bravery does not come from dominance. It comes from honesty." Emily wiped her eyes, small but steady. "As for the digital harassment," Judy continued, sliding a paper toward Brandon, "you will write formal apologies to both victims. They will be reviewed by this court. And they will reflect accountability, not excuses." Brandon nodded again, voice catching. "I will. I swear I will." The gallery watched in breathless silence, everyone from Evan to the bailiff holding still as the weight of the judgment sank in. Judge Judy straightened her posture. Her final words, gathering like a storm, meant not to frighten, but to cleanse. "Young man," she said softly, "you have spent years trying to be seen, but you chose the wrong tools. Fear, intimidation, cruelty, those tools don't build a life, they bury it." Brandon's chin trembled, the rawness of the moment cracking through his defenses. "But today," she added gently, "you didn't just face consequences. You faced yourself, and that is the beginning of every real change a human being can make." Lewis's eyes warmed, not with forgiveness alone, but with recognition of a turning point hard-earned. Judge Judy lifted the gavel fully. "Now this court finds in favor of the plaintiff. Restitution is ordered. Sanctions are imposed. Counseling is mandatory." She paused, letting the silence stretch, gathering its weight. Then she addressed Brandon directly, voice heavy with purpose. "And Mr. Hale, what you do next will determine whether this day becomes a scar or a foundation."